Hello and welcome to episode 15 of Veteran Instincts. We are back with another game from the Vagabond Open. This time we have Tyler Samplonius taking a droid swarm against our very own Lloyd Boman. We're going to hear from Lloyd in a moment, but first I'll just say hello to Ben, who
Hello.
joins us yet again to provide his expert commentary.
What? I don't know why you do this.
So Lloyd, why don't you take us through the matchup? And we're just starting to see rocks go down here, so kind of talk us through the opening setup.
Sure, absolutely. So in terms of the way Vagabond works, is you're picking a different faction every week for 7 weeks. And so this was the week I decided to roll out the First Order, which is probably my weakest faction. It's certainly the faction I'm least excited to run. And so I was delighted, obviously, to come against a droid swarm. So in terms of individual ships, the way I kind of look at it is, I feel like the TIE SF is a kind of very middling chassis, right? It's not anything exciting, but it is almost twice the price of a sort of naked drone. So I'm kind of looking at going into this, I need to be trading, and if I'm trading, I need to trade 2 drones for every SF. And that sounds hard to do, right? Because we have the same attack dice and the same agility. I have the same amount of health, looking at them as a 2-to-1 trade, but he has twice as many chances to shoot at me. So the only thing I have in my advantage going into this is that rear arc and the initiative. So an opportunity to fly them a bit like aces, they only have a single reposition, but to leverage that rear arc certainly is something I'm looking at trying to do. In terms of turn 0, so you're seeing me here place rocks basically out of the way as much as possible because Tyler's entire list has grappling struts, and I want to limit the amount he can leverage them. So rocks are going out of the way as far as possible to give me open spaces to be able to jump into and get around. Because the SF dial is pretty decent, right? It has a 5 forward, has a 3 turn, has a 1 forward. So you can be pretty open and flexible with your dial and choose pretty freely from what you want. But I just want big, large avenues and spaces for me to be able to do that.
Yeah, and that was my thought kind of looking at the matchup as well, is I thought you might struggle, and obviously we'll see whether that happens or not, because as you say, the stats are very similar barring the health, and not only fewer shots, but the big thing your list doesn't have is the ability to share those tokens around. So on defense, the droids are actually, from a token point of view, a fair bit more defensible than you, and I wonder whether even with your advanced optics, you're going to struggle to put damage through on the droids, and I'd be concerned about that. It sounds like you're kind of obviously not going to joust, and you're really going to have to almost try and fly this as 5 aces.
That's certainly the plan, yeah. I think using them as aces is difficult and not quite what you're looking for, but certainly you want to be avoiding a joust because the joust just isn't in my favour. The likelihood is I kill maybe a droid in the opening pass, and then I might lose half my list in return. So that's the last thing I want. So I want to try and get to a position where I am getting non-return shots, because then I can spend my focus freely on offense and use the optics to try and max out damage.
Whenever I've flown against good SF players, they'll try and pull you into a situation where you're chasing them, and I wonder if that's like, you can't joust here. The thing about these big droid lists that I've found as well is they can't stay together forever. So if you can be patient and time things well, eventually you can pull them apart. It's all well and good then being able to sit on rocks, but that means like, cool, I'll go over here, right? Which is what your rock setup lets you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way that I tend to fly them, or the way that I'm looking to fly the SFs, isn't so much to try and pull them apart as you would with a sort of proper ace list. Just because the SFs don't have the ability to reposition and modify their dice. So it's more of a case of trying to swoop past them, and we'll see as we come here into placing of ships a little bit about what my plan was. But yeah, it's definitely not a matchup I like the look of. In terms of keeping the list together, actually, Seer is the biggest issue because he has such a different dial. He can and often struggles to stay in a position where he can keep back and keep mods. Bumping him is something you see quite often, and sometimes he will just shoot too far past the droid swarm and get isolated.
Yeah.
And with a lot of lists, the way to beat a droid swarm is to kill the tactical relay carrier.
There's this beautiful channel I can see, and I don't know if that's your plan at all because it feels risky, but like where you can imagine you like pushing towards them and then sweeping past, but they are fast enough that feels like it would be risky.
Absolutely, and that's exactly the plan I'm actually looking at. So you'll see set up here in this box.
Yeah.
And the fact that I have, as I say, both the 5 forward and the 3 turn gives me those options. So what I'm looking for with these first 2 SFs that are going down is to do exactly that, is to kind of bait him into engagement and then just go screaming past, leave him facing the wrong way and have those shots. And then the second 2 SFs that I'm going to place are going to be in a slightly different position, and they're going to try and slow roll in.
Okay.
So 2 of my ships are shooting past the opening engagement and getting shots out the back, and 2 of my ships are slow rolling in, so I can get all 4 ships shooting onto them.
Yeah.
So the bottom 2 SFs here are the ones that are planning to slow roll in.
Yeah.
And basically they want to just kind of one forward and one bank as long as possible until the droids are committed and then choose.
Yeah.
So I'm expecting the droids to actually turn right and slow roll as well and kind of delay coming into this big open space. And so my top SFs are going to go fast and try and get into a position to make him make decisions, and my bottom SFs are going to go slowly. Now, actually, if you look very carefully, my SFs at the bottom are slightly misaligned, and so they can't just go straight without hitting those rocks.
Oh.
And I realised this as I'm saying dials, that a few turns from now, if I want to just keep going straight, I'm going to come into contact with, I think, the second rock. I think the first rock might just about be okay, or I might be able to go fast enough to go jump it.
Yeah.
But the second rock is a real problem, and that's just simply kind of focusing on where on the board I want them to be, but not counting for those rocks.
Yeah.
So already I'm having to adjust the plans because of my own mistakes.
Yeah, and it's really frustrating when you do things like that, isn't it? The mistakes in setup are so avoidable, but because you're often not really in the game yet, there's a kind of time when maybe a concentration isn't quite that high. And I've certainly done that before. And I can remember a few sort of big tournament games late into tournaments where I'd spent the first 3 turns trying to sort my list out.
Yeah, you're trying to fix
because of minor mistakes, and you just hope your opponent kind of doesn't realise that's what you're doing and rush you before you've got it sorted out.
It's like, I think, when you set ships up and then you bank them all on one bumps, and then you spend forever trying to get them back to the point they should be. Right?
So with Holo, do you have any plans for Holo's ability, or it's just a good value ship that fits with this list?
It's a weird one, because the way the list is intended to work is you kind of find the assets around in a box, and Holo stays back kind of range 2 behind them, and then just passes out tokens that they need. But in this matchup, I don't like that at all, and so I kind of changed the plan entirely, because I don't want Holo anywhere near this.
Yeah.
Because she can only have a single token, and she doesn't want to be anywhere near this droid swarm ideally until I've dealt with a lot of it.
Yep.
And we see here actually Tyler's first moves coming out, where he comes out fast out of the gates, and this already kind of throws my plan off, because I was expecting him to slow roll much more and kind of give himself time to kind of get Kraken in place and get everything sort of where he wanted it. I mean, immediately having to adjust on the fly.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? He's probably seen the same thing that we talked about, which is like, you've got this channel that looks really nice to go through. So it's like, he goes fast here, he can then turn after. I mean, you can run away through the rocks and stuff, which is fine. But I think him going past this rock is better than slow rolling, actually.
Yes, absolutely.
So I like his move.
The danger for me for turning into the rocks is, because I can't boost, I'm having to choose in dial phase how many ships we're engaging with.
So the problem for you now is, like, next turn, you go fast. If he just hard turns and you're getting shot by everything. So I mean, I don't know about you, Paul, but I feel like he just has to start thinking about turning away already.
The next turn the plan was originally to 5 forward again, and immediately that is off the table, right? Because if he turns his entire list down, or even banks it as you would expect him to do, bring it down towards the bottom of the table, that 5 forward just ends up in a terrible place. And you see here the barrel roll as well to fix the back 2 SFs.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and I suppose if we're being critical, then there's 2 things that I would question your setup. You've got a plan, right? And we've been talking on previous episodes about how good it is to have a plan going into the opening. But you seem to have made a big assumption on that first turn of the game, as we see sort of the opening sort of trade of fire here at range 3, not likely to do anything. You've kind of committed to this idea that he's turning away almost from turn 1, and I wonder whether there was a setup that would have allowed you to make that decision a turn later. If you had set up these 2 guys who are far forward, kind of facing down towards the bottom of the board edge, and then 2 harded into this gap, then you would have had that one turn of seeing whether Tyler is coming straight towards you or turning away. If he's turning away, then you can start your 5 straights the turn after. And if he comes towards you, then you can hard turn back again and be running away from him, and rather than now already being too close. And the other thing that I wonder about, I can understand the fear of giving up Holo's points, because he's, up there with Seer in terms of being the most expensive thing on the board, not quite as expensive as Seer. But I wonder if as a result you set him up too far away from everything else, or is it that he's so fast that you kind of think he can cope and get back involved?
He's definitely flexible enough, but I don't want Holo kind of anywhere near this, because he still only has 4 health and admittedly 3 agility, but with a single token he will absolutely melt if you put him in front of the droids.
Mm-hmm.
So the plan is to trade some amount of SFs for hopefully about a similar number of droids, and then give myself a position where Holo can then be an ace and roll around and actually earn his points back. But he's certainly not going to earn them in the first couple of turns.
And that's often something you see with the kind of lightweight aces like Sunter or something, is his role is in late game cleanup rather than engaging the whole swarm. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm losing obviously some red dice going into the initial engagement. But that feels like an acceptable cost for not potentially throwing them away.
And so, having done that, having sort of been surprised by Tyler's opening and being caught out a bit, kind of left with a question of where do you go from here? So from Tyler's point of view, there doesn't really seem to be any particular downside in two banking.
Yeah.
I think you've got a choice. You either two bank the whole list, which seems fine. You could kind of do a mixture of banks and maybe hard turn the back guys if you were really worried about kind of cutting off options for next turn. But that seems to be relatively straightforward. There's no reason to do anything other than that. You certainly don't continue straight down the board edge. There doesn't seem to be any benefit of that at all. Between myself and Ben, I'm not sure how Lloyd gets himself out of trouble here.
I mean, my first instinct is that he has to hard turn, but he hard turned. Interesting. I feel like Lloyd has to hard turn left here. I understand that the rocks are an issue, but banking gets him nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Straight gets him nothing. If he does like a crazy surprise strange move where he turns right, that would be weird, and I don't see what he gets out of it. So that's the obvious thing that jumps out to me, is that the left hard turn here with the front ones. The back ones could still slow roll, to be fair. But yeah, what's your thinking?
Yeah, I think it's that, isn't it? You have to just get range.
Yeah.
And I think if you hard turn those away, you hope that the kind of back line of ships aren't firing at them. The back two are probably more tricky because you could one straight them in and kind of focus fire. And actually, in that situation, you might end up with all four of your ships shooting one droid. Yep. And not taking fire from the entire list back, or at least the fire being divided, which is quite nice. But you've replaced the front set of SFs, which are in trouble this turn, with the back set of SFs, which will be in trouble next turn. So
yeah, and absolutely, and that was something that was very much in my mind. Right, is I can perhaps get one or two of them to safety, but how do I do it in a way that doesn't just leave a different one out? Because they're all completely identical, right? Like no one of them is more valuable than the other. So having a plan that gets one to safety that leaves another one out to dry doesn't help me.
Like I said, you don't have the brilliant ways of repositioning around the rocks, but it is playing in a way to their strengths, right? Like they're good at kiting things. I like these barrels, by the way. They get him into even better range, so it's harder for you to get out of more arcs.
Just taking options away from you on my dial. Now everything to the right side of my dial is a bad choice. And still, to be fair to Tyler, most of the stuff forwards is a bad choice.
Yep.
Yeah. I like them over hard turning and staying still. Definitely. The position he's in now is better than the position he was in before he barrel rolled.
Oh, the bank was better, right?
Yeah, I think the bank on this occasion was just better.
I agree.
You're aiming at rocks. These guys don't care about aiming at rocks, but you have narrowed down your arcs. And this backline of guys, if Lloyd does anything slow, are going to struggle to get shots. And you've kind of committed harder than you needed to for next turn. Plus, you've got your ship stressed. So I personally can't see an upside over banking. I think from the looks of things, and especially given that backline hasn't barrel rolled, my assumption is that Tyler was worried about the 5 straight and whether he would cover it with the banks, which is fair enough. As I say, my guess is that it would have still been in. But that seems to be the only reason to hard turn them and then not to kind of barrel roll that second line of droids.
There's one thing worth mentioning, actually, though, is that Discord missiles are a thing. So blue by barreling like that, now that Discord missile is a problem.
Very true, very true. And and you are more likely to get the Discords off. It might have been nice for that reason to do a combination, maybe to put that front guy where he is, but have 2 bank the others, because then you've got Discord missiles threatening different areas of the board. But yeah, the Discords are certainly consideration.
I like the bank with the guy next to the rock that you did, because it gives
I
you more
really
interesting
like
options next turn as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was more of that kind of idea of trying, like, assuming that he was going to do something along the lines of this move, right? That one now just has the option to get behind his list next turn.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it? That one change means that Tyler now can't cover everything next turn.
Yep.
Had that guy gone straight, I think Lloyd's very predictable, but already he's looking like he's in a lovely flanking position to kind of get round next turn, get behind the list, and start creating problems.
Yeah, I'm imagining like a 3-bank right or something. I mean, he can still turn after that guy, but it's like we talked about before. Suddenly he has to start splitting his list, right? So you find these ways to maybe, like the guys on the left could turn towards him, but the guys who are stressed, they're committed now. So yeah, it's good.
And we see that Discord missile coming out here onto the SF. Obviously, the SFs don't have to be as worried about it as sort of genuine aces do. They've got those shields to absorb it, but it's that extra damage, right? And that guy could easily lose shield, sat where he is prior to that Discord missile triggering. With Holo, you took the strain, is it, to barrel roll?
Yes.
But it's okay because you're going to pass off the evade.
I am, yeah.
I mean, it almost feels bad just having one Discord out. Like Holo's got a nice shot at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Holo came in here knowing that there was a good chance I was taking a Discord. And so she's here. She doesn't have a shot on the droids, which means the droids have no shot back at her, so she's at 0 risk. So, you know, if she was in a different chassis, then you would just be taking all kinds of mods to kill this Discord. As it is, I'm doing it with naked dice. But it felt like a pretty good situation to come out to be able to cover it. And Holo's ability obviously just allows the SF that's taking a lot of fire to have an extra token.
So you take the shot here. Only the one hit, and I believe these guys have 3 agility.
They do indeed.
So it could have gone better, but still a chance. No mods. And there we are, off the board. And actually, that was something that I imagine I won't be the only one. You forget you can do that, right? I've certainly been in games where I forget to shoot the probe droids or the buzz droids, and that's a very obvious situation, right, where Holo had no other shot. But there may be moments in games where it's worth doing, even passing up a shot on another ship. If you've got an I-1, you know, A-wing shooting, it may be far more useful to take the crit away from something rather than shoot something.
It very rarely feels good to give up a shot on an enemy ship. But in this situation where you're not, it's an easy decision for sure.
Man, when they get the buzz droid on Fen Rao, you're like, I will do anything to get that off there.
And the buzz droid going on the back of the SF there, was that to give it the extra range from the Holo shot?
I think it was. I think Tyler had worked out that was the plan, and so we was trying to just keep it a little bit further away. It can barrel roll, and it could fly forward to just get out the next turn anyway. It's probably only going to trigger once maximum, and so it was a good idea.
Yeah, right. That was just really clear thinking. I would not have been aware of that at all.
I actually wonder though. That one was so easy to remove, or it's all going to do a shield, right? And you can remove it easily later. It's like, do you know what I mean?
It's what else are you going to gain out of it? So calculates, there's still 5 on the board, so you're not sort of super tight on calculates. We'll talk a bit more about that in a second because there could be more. And I suppose it's more threatening to Holo, so it might be more useful to put pressure on Holo later in the game. But I don't know. I think it's that you've got the opportunity to use it, and you might as well. And if it had sat there, that's a bonus damage onto that SF, and that might make all the difference.
If you'd spend a calculate to take a shield off something, then it's the same, almost the same calculation.
And actually, further to that, like you look at it and like, okay, you've got 4 guys who are going to shoot at that one droid, so maybe I need to get rid of it now because.
Yeah, absolutely right. There's every chance he dies here. He's just taken 8 dice. As it is, he has taken 0 damage, but he could have taken 3.
Yeah, there's a lot of ships on here for no damage.
Yes.
We're starting to see a bit of what I said in the opening, right? Which is a maximum of 2 hits is not the way to kill a droid. You know, they have a high chance, a very, very high chance of getting 1 paint and having the token, and a non-zero chance of getting 2. And I did wonder whether you're going to struggle to chip things through here. So this is the droids starting to fire back.
So that is, 2 shots in, and I've spent my focus and my evade. Yeah, there's only 4 more to go.
Starting to run out of calculates a little bit here. And on that point, Tyler has Kraken. And has, I think, just forgotten to use him.
Yeah, no, he actually did. He just completely forgot on the first turn. And I think realises at the end of this turn that he can keep them and should have been previously.
Yeah. And I think it's really easy to do. We've said it before about Vagabonds. You're running new lists every week, so people aren't as kind of good with their triggers and with the different abilities of the list. But I also think it's a sort of slight weakness of what I do and a shortcut a lot of players take, which is to not do any actions on the first turn. You don't bother putting those focus tokens out. And I don't know, but you may have found that if he'd been in the habit of, I'm going to take a calculate and I'm putting all the calculates on, at the point where he goes to take him off, that's a trigger to remember the ability. Whereas if they're never on the board, you never give yourself that opportunity.
I think this definitely might be a quirk of playing on Vassal, because one thing as well for me is like you've got this little play window with your cards off to the side,
Absolutely.
and I just never ever look at them, unless I'm putting damage cards on them, and it's just like, I'm at a table, I've got my cards in front of me, like, okay, what have I got? What do I got to remember? Cool. Just your habits are so different.
Yeah, if you're playing Vassal or TTSX, you need to kind of develop those same sort of tournament behaviours and habits, right?
Yeah.
And I think we see the first damage going through there. So finally, on the 8th shot of this round, we get some damage done. And that back droid chips 1 damage through onto your nearest SF there. Still 2 more shots to go. So actually, this could end up going quite badly at this stage. But 2 attack into 3 agility. A single focus there and spends, and we get the evade. I think I'd have been tempted to save the calculate in case I double focused, although I suppose that is an unlikely dice roll, and he's still got the 1 calculate. So probably fair enough. The thing you have avoided here is Xerox, and again that's where that lack of sort of banked calculate is going to hurt later in the game if Tyler doesn't sort of start banking his calculates. Because with Seer, you can burn through them all pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so engagement.
It's a real wet noodle fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really is, yeah.
We've discovered that 2 dice attacks at targets at range 3 don't do a lot.
Yeah. There are 12 ships on the table and 2 of them are threatening.
Yeah.
And they're hiding at the back.
Yeah.
So, having said I didn't want to plug into the rocks and have a battle there, I now have almost no choice to do with my first SFs, right?
So the one thing from Tyler's point of view, as we sort of go back to the decision to hard turn rather than bank, is that front row are now stressed and are now much less flexible. And I'm believing right in saying they've got no banks that clear stress, nobly banks.
Correct, yeah.
And a bank is what you want to do here, right? Really, they all want to 2 bank again. Sounds like my only manoeuvre that I will ever set is a 2 bank.
Droid take
banking. that front row, particularly the back row, could hard turn, barrel roll, do a kind of similar crab walk thing. But the front row really wants to be 2 banking. I think what I might be tempted to do with them though, is to do 2 straights and then barrel roll. The column, although it was a problem in the first round where your back row, although they got shots, were at range 3. Now that gums up a lot of board space and it starts to limit the options for this guy who's facing towards the swarm. I think you need to do something to limit his ability to get behind you, because otherwise over the next few turns he's going to be a problem. So I think for me, I 2 straightforward and barrel roll everything across, take the calculate again. And then probably 2 bank in that back line to cover. Then you end up with your swarm still sort of being there or thereabouts together. Everything with mods and quite a net of arcs and bodies for everything to dodge. Lloyd, I presume you've just got to continue to run away with these SFs that are facing away from the fight.
Yeah, second flank of droids are basically either going to come fast down towards this channel or turn onto the SFs who slow rolled.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what I can't afford to do is let any of my SFs get caught. So all of the engagements need to be arranged. I need to just kind of ping damage through. So I think they're wary of just everything doing. Actually, what Tyler's done here is coming hard for me.
Yep.
In terms of the yellow 2 forward and barrel roll, the thing everyone forgets on SFs, of course, they have a white 5 forwards. So I'm pretty confident I can jump that even if he does do it.
Okay.
So I actually was it's almost just like a little rule I have with SFs. It's like, especially when you have them in numbers, it's just don't try and chase them too hard, because they are so fast and they'll have arcs everywhere. So I was actually tempted, imagining I was Tyler, it's like, those ones, like chasing them is going to be a super annoying. They're going to get away whatever I do. I can chase them into the corner, but that gives him my flank and my rear for free. He could turn everyone towards this one. That like I liked that bank move, but he definitely had an option to maybe just turn onto it hard, right?
Yeah,
Potentially.
yeah,
It's a big gamble,
actually.
though, isn't it? Because if
Yeah, I
he
mean, yeah.
does,
But the
everything
thing
else
is,
potentially gets shots into. But yeah, he has to pick something.
but he's not overcommitted that, right? So say he did that, and then it's like, okay, well, these guys are gone, unless you'd gone slow, which is a concern. But he's still keeping his guys together. I mean, what he's done here, I really like anyway. So everything I just said is moot. But he's keeping his guys together. He's covering really broad arcs. It feels good. It's hard to deal with that one that you banked, which is why that was so good.
And actually, my concern going into this round is very much Holo, right? Holo is facing into the teeth of this, and
Please
just
leave.
wants to try and get out and get away. Doesn't have many great options.
You can get at range, but I don't think you can avoid everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that maybe explains it. Actually, I really like Ben's idea, and I agree with him. If everything had two-hearted, and then sort of seeing where it ended up, maybe even then barreled up towards the top of the board, then I agree with you. I think if you two-heart everything, barrel it back up towards the top board edge, the only thing you don't cover from the SF that banked towards you last turn is the hard turn away. Even then, you probably clip it with a couple of arcs.
Yeah.
And I agree that you haven't overcommitted, and you can just two-hard again next turn, back down the board, and erase up a share. So I think that was probably the best solution. I wonder here with Tyler, with this set of moves, whether what he's doing is hoping that Lloyd is silly enough to bring Holo in, and going for that kind of slightly more more expensive, higher damage output piece, and thinking that this might be opportunity to trap it and get it off the board.
It'd be hard to see in a million years who would fly into this though. So the other thing I was thinking about is the shot. So say he had two-hearted, or turn towards this SF at the top. Like they're not only you're going to get a lot of shots, they'll be really good shots, right? They're like range 1, range 2.
Yes, yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
block him. Like everything about it is just better. Whereas
Yeah,
here
I
they're
think
going to be a whole bunch of shots that are not very good.
Yeah, I think it was a really good plan, and I think it was one that, if we wound it back in hindsight, that there's not much downside. I think that, the only way it goes even slightly wrong is if Holo does, 5 straight towards you, and then he gets ash shot into the side of your list.
Yeah.
But then what does he do the turn after, right? Because as we say, you've got the two-hard back down board, and he's then facing the entire swarm. So yeah, I think I really like that as a counter to Lloyd's play.
So Lloyd gave me some really good advice in a game he and I played. I don't know, it was earlier this week or last week, whatever. But I was flying a resistance list, and it's like a list that has lots of ships, and you've got to keep the guns on. And he was playing a sort of AC Jedi list, and he managed to get behind me with one of his Jedi, and I overreact, and you get pulled apart. And it's like, with lists like this, maybe you just need to accept that. Look, he's going to get into my flank a bit, but I have such good shots in this other thing. You know what? I just have to accept it, and I think that's the thing maybe you have to think about with lists like this.
I think the one hard away to the right there is probably the right move with Holo. Tempting to go left because you're starting to look a little bit like you're going to get trapped in this corner a bit, but I suppose that's knowing where Tyler's gone, and if he brought that back line straight down the board,
then Holo's just rolling straight into them.
Yeah, absolutely. So first shot coming in from an unmodded Grievous, but he needs mods. Does hit crit, and the one SF that you haven't managed to really, the sacrificial lamb this turn, shall we call him, takes an unfortunate 2 shields there.
Thankfully, you're hitting as hard as Seer, so.
Yeah, and 3 damage here. 1, this is from the range 1 rear arc shot from that guy who's now in a nice position behind the list. 1 calculate. Obviously, can spend his friend's calculate to stay alive here. Didn't take any damage last turn, but doesn't, and is removed from the board. And Lloyd, is that just forgetting network calculations?
I think it must have been in hindsight. I assumed that the SF that had been slightly isolated had already fired and did the damage, and we missed it, but perhaps not.
No, I don't think so. I think that's happening in a moment. So get the rest of the SF firing here. So chips another damage through nicely from that range 3 shot into the droid number 3. So going well for you so far. That's a droid off the board and a damage into another. Here's the shot from the tokenless guy. So you fire again at the already damaged one. Put a crit through. Well, that's a damage sensor array, which is not great for droids.
Nice. Yeah.
That's the one I always get on Guri. I'm like, oh, why?
And so you paused a bit before taking that shot. Obviously, the alternative target you had was Sia, who is at range 3 but with no tokens and maybe an opportunity to shoot when the Soulless 1 ability isn't triggering.
I think it was possibly looking at the other droids whether I could strip some tokens because of the shots coming back.
That makes sense.
But ultimately, I think the teal shot is probably the easiest one. So if I can take it off the table here, then it saves me potentially as much as 2 damage.
I mean, when I see that many tokens on the board, like I'm like stripping tokens starts to feel like whatever.
Yeah, especially
well, the token is right. So every token is potentially 1 save damage.
Yeah, I
know. And the last guy had an opportunity to kill a second droid, which really would have put you in the box seat here, I think. But range 3 gets the 2 evades and is okay. And we're looking at the first couple of droids here. First one didn't have any shots, and the second has the range 3 into the depleted guy, but starting to be a little bit low on calculate. Only the 1 hit, and even with the 2 agility is okay. But then this backline now have some good shots into this SF, and I think sort of the outcome of this is going to be really, really pivotal on how the game goes. With Holo in a tricky position, those 2 SFs flying away, you kind of need this guy to survive, right? Because otherwise, there's one target at the top of the board that Tyler can spend a turn or 2 dealing with before the rest of your list gets involved again.
That's the thing about if you do. I'm just obsessed with not chasing SFs, but it's like because they want you to chase them. You're like, okay, cool. I'm not going to do that. You fly over there. That means your friend is isolated. So that is.
Yeah, it's very easy to just sort of go, well, chase me. I'll put a 5 forward in. And I'll keep range. And if they don't, then you're like, oh, now I'm half.
But you were supposed to chase.
Yeah.
It's fine. You just 3 sleep and then end up even further away. So first shot came in. Some nice natural evades there. Second shot, only going to be 1 hit. And some more evades. So looking like you might get away with this. In fact, almost certainly not going to die here. Hard to see where 4 damage comes from. And this one last shot. 1 above half at the moment, which is certainly relevant. Is those points scored, especially with this many ships on the board, that we're not going to go to sort of total destruction, and this is going to be on points at the end of the game.
Yeah, there's a lot of very cheap ships in play here that don't give up a lot of points, but also don't score a lot of points.
They can't do any damage.
With all swarms, right? Just the manoeuvring, everything takes a bit longer. With this number of ships on either side, you always get fewer turns in the game than you do in a kind of Aces versus Aces match.
Yeah.
So we get an arc check there, and that low health tokenless SF is just in arc, which is bad news for Lloyd. And so we get the final range 3 shot here, which is good. Hit crit after the token spend, but at least rolling that 1 evade, so avoids the crit, but is halved.
So what do you see for Tyler next?
I think you do have an opportunity here where half of Lloyd's list is in a suboptimal position. I think what I'd be inclined to do was turn to try and engage these 2 SFs on the top half of the board. I think that having moved yellow somewhere else, I think I'd be tempted by the 1 hard with pink and then the barrel roll, because I can't see the top SF doing anything other than the 2 hard. So I think you might be able to get into a blocking position. Maybe it doesn't quite work, but I'd be tempted to try and get into a blocking position just to kind of limit his ability to come around that corner. And I think worst case scenario, you're trading shots with him. Best case scenario, you get the block in and he doesn't get to shoot this turn. And with the others, I think I'd be going down to focus on this 3 health guy. So again, a kind of combination of banks and hard turns to kind of stay on the top half of the board and try and focus on him. The risk there is that Lloyd brings Holo in, but I think with those first 2 turns, it's a relatively safe to assume that Lloyd's going to be cautious with Holo, and I think that the turn in with Holo is super risky, because if Tyler does just go straight with everything, then Holo blows up.
We've spoken before about trying to get a read for your opponent, right? And I think what I'm signaling here very clearly with Holo is that I don't want to just throw her into the fight. I want to keep her later on, or I'm scared of kind of giving away her points. So I think if Tyler is looking at that and reacting to that, then he should have a pretty good feeling that Holo's almost definitely not turning in here.
And from your point of view, Lloyd, as we start to see Adars go down here, what is the plan for getting Holo and those bottom SFs involved again?
So having had the original plan of getting an SF behind his list and kind of having the sort of fight almost on multiple fronts for him, having sort of achieved that last turn and killed that droid, it doesn't actually leave the top SF a huge number of choices. So as you said, right, he's almost certainly too harding. A 3 sloop is okay, but has the chance of getting left behind by the fight again. But he's sort of there and thereabouts. So maybe this turn he's not very useful, but next turn he becomes increasingly useful and can start really kind of harrying the back of Tyler's list. So I'm expecting him either to come down towards the SFs that are facing down towards the board edge, or to come in for the other one that he's just halved. And so I'm kind of playing around those two things. So actually the two that were previously running away and had run into the rocks, this turn I think I'm right in saying I slowed them down, or at least was considering slowing them down so that I can then actually start trading shots again, because the whole of his list is going to struggle to get down because of where that rock is.
That's interesting. So we can go back to the rocks. I'm sure you weren't thrilled to have taken 3 rocks given the droid swarm, but I think that although rocks are less impactful to droid swarms than they are to anything else, you can still use them to your advantage, right? They have to stop on them, and once they're on them, they have limited movement options. So you can still use rocks to your advantage, or at least limit the advantage.
Still get value from it, absolutely.
Yeah, still get value from limit the advantage. And you're doing that now, right? You know that they can't plow through the middle of the board with no consequences. This guy now, actually having flown straight onto that rock, is in a slightly tricky position. He has to, if you turn around, if you were to flip your ships around, he'd have to decide to rotate or to come straight off, and he could end up being arc dodged doing any of those. So that's interesting. That front droid there with the hard turns took the calculator initially, and then I think you both remember that he has had the disable damage sensor rate, which so you take the calculator back and allow him to fix the damage sensor rate. It looks like with that first move that he is maybe kind of continuing to chase this bottom set of ships, and I can kind of see the temptation to go and catch Holo if he ends up in this corner, and there's definite value to that. But I feel like that's maybe a little bit of a missed opportunity. I think you had the opportunity there to engage less than half of Lloyd's list, put the pressure on you, Lloyd, in terms of getting those back around and back involved. You know, you cannot sustain a 2v6 fight. And I wonder if Tyler's kind of lost that opportunity now. And the reason I was talking about trying to get in the way of your top SF is absolutely, as you say, like the 2 hard this turn might not be all that great, but the 2 hard next turn is absolutely fantastic, right? You in the back of the list, you know, behind things having to K-turn if they want to shoot you. And I kind of feel like you have to do something to stop that happening. And peeling 1 droid off, I think, is a small cost for that.
I mean, I feel like the one that's damaged, it's easily killable now. He's getting out of this for free, which disturbs me. Unless there's a really obvious reason why you can't get onto it, my instinct is to just try and finish something off, especially because like you can finish it off without much return fire, right? As these 2 are turning away, the one at the top isn't going to do too much. Like I felt like there's a big opportunity to really threaten that guy.
Yeah, and obviously we're about to see what happens with that damaged SF. The hard turn to the right looks pretty good here. In some ways, with a swarm, you don't want to try and cover everything, because you end up with one, you know, trading your 2 dice gun into a better ship and a better shot. But given that Holo and these bottom SFs were unlikely to be any threat this turn, continuing to commit so hard towards them seems to have let these top 2 SFs off the hook. And now you've got just as difficult, in fact, a more difficult decision next turn for Tyler, right? Where he's got the damaged SF now flying away from his list, and Lloyd's bottom 2 SFs turn around and ready to engage. Now he's really sort of looking like he's sandwiched between 2 halves and can't safely commit to either one.
It felt like what Tyler had played for was the 5 forward from the wounded SF, because the barrel roll from Pink would have blocked it, and actually would have blocked it perfectly. So kind of watching this back now a few weeks after it happened, I'd sort of forgotten whether I had done a 5 forward or a 3 hard. And it felt like a 50-50 choice, honestly, because if Pink doesn't barrel roll there, then again I'm behind his list at range 1 with 0 threats, right?
Yeah, and actually this turn it looks like you're going to take no incoming fire and have a couple of nice range one shots in return.
So actually, the first one declines the range one shot into Seer.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because A, I had no mods, and B, my ships aren't very heavy hitters, right? So I'm averaging one hit. Seer has a defensive token and has defensive rerolls. And I need to put 4 damage into him to harm him. So the point at which I get any points from him is so far down the line.
Yeah.
And we know that this isn't going to be a very long game. So taking a range 2 shot into a droid is ultimately a better way of scoring points.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. Soulless one is really good.
But so you take that shot and it's evaded, and then just the one other shot here. And so actually you did no damage there. A bit disappointing, given the position you got yourself into.
The power of SFs.
The power of SFs, absolutely. But positionally, I think you are now in a really nice place. And I think that Tyler's options are now very limited. I think his opportunity to engage these top 2 SFs has passed. I think this is the point, Ben, where Tyler is in the situation of accepting that he has been flanked and that there's nothing he can do about it, right? If he now tries to go for them with those talent rolls and K-turns, all he's doing is denying himself actions for when these bottom 2 SFs of Lloyd's roll back in. So here you feel he almost has to continue to commit down into this corner. And I think the faster he can go, the better, because it gets him away from the stuff behind him.
Yeah.
The damaged guy is facing away, so he's a bit limited in what he can do. And the unhurt SF at the top of the board either hard turns, in which case he's sort of slowing himself down, or could go for a quicker kind of 3 bank, but then gets into trouble with that rock in the middle of the board. So I think the choice is between going straight and hoping you catch Holo, or banking down and engaging these 2 bottom SFs.
I mean, my instinct is to go for the SFs, like Holo. It's going to be hard to pin down. My first instinct is like, okay, 2 forward, barrel roll across with some of these. You know, you've got a shield down them.
To do something similar is that the droids, the one on the rock is going to 2 forward and barrel roll off, and the others are going to 2 bank down, and pink maybe just 2 forwards to drop onto that rock. Some combination of that just to threaten the SFs, because they have a decent dial, but when they're stressed, they're fairly predictable.
Yeah.
And so it's likely they're just going to be turning towards that space and trading fire, and that's what I was anticipating coming to this turn. And so a little bit conservative with the 2 SFs that have kind of got the flank, because I don't want to get them bumped, because again their damage output just goes way down at that stage.
I agree. I think I'd probably bank in. I think I probably want to make enough space that Seer could come in with a 3 bank again to get closer to the things he's firing at and further away from things firing at him. But I think that the reason the straight is an option is because of Holo's position. Because if you go straight here, one of 2 things happens. Either if Lloyd tries to turn left here, you catch him this turn, and he's in a not insignificant amount of trouble, probably ends up in some bullseyes, and at which point, you know, could die very quickly.
But who catches him? Like, right, so say green goes fast here.
Well, I think if
Holo
you
turns left boosts, I mean...
I think if you 5 straight all of them. So his blue hard turn, I believe, is the 1 hard.
It is, yeah.
So if he wants to get rid of that token, which let's assume he does, I think that limits him a bit. And so I think if you 5 straight forward with, you know, yellow probably has to stop on the rock, so maybe yellow goes 4, but yellow, green, you come off the rock, you know, pink goes over, and you bank in. I think you get a fair number of shots. And that's if he turns left. And if he turns right, you probably don't shoot much this turn. But if he turns right, he's really cornered for next turn. So it's more of a long play. And as I say, I think I probably would turn down and engage the SFs. But there is an option here to trap Holo either this turn or next turn. But at that point, although he's worth 56 points, I would worry that you're going to have taken too much damage, and that 56 points won't be relevant.
Okay, so he's done Paul's play. Intriguing.
This does catch me by surprise. It's very, very aggressive, and it goes hard for Holo, and I hadn't really anticipated it.
Nice.
Looking at the score, obviously the game is close, right? But it feels very much like it's still absolutely in the balance, right? There's 18 points in at the moment.
That one droid actually flew over the rock. You don't see that very often, but rolled is okay. Yeah, and although I was advocating it as an option, I worry about it, given that you're going to be taking fire here from all of Lloyd's SFs and potentially having passed up a number of shots here. It's sort of slightly tricky to see if Holo comes right. That blue droid isn't shooting anything. The green droid is going to have an obstructed sort of range 3 shot. Although he's only a little bit behind, I wonder if Tyler can afford to be kind of losing those shots at this point, given the that I think he's in positionally a weaker spot. And then that final droid also going very quickly, also skipping over the rock. A bit of bad luck there. That's very close. I assume that was kind of aimed to land on the rock. And I think by the looks of things, there wasn't quite enough space for the 4 straight to have fit. So unlucky. This time takes the hit. And that's a sort of another nice little bonus damage there onto a droid from Lloyd. So the SF turning in here in a nice position now with the mod. At range 1 of both that droid that's on the rock and of Seer. And your damaged SF, not going to be getting any shots this round. Maybe could barrel roll to try, but actually probably just as well staying still. And then so well. That just shows what I know. I think I'd have kept him still because then I think I like the 2 hard next turn more positionally. What was the reason for the barrel roll there? For me, Lloyd, that brings you too close to this rock in the centre for the 2 hard next turn. And I think if you'd stayed where you were, you could have just 2 hard turned down and got a shot next turn.
Yeah, I think it was being aware that time is running low and just not wanting that droid to get left behind. And so the 2 and the 3 hard next turn, bring him back down, yes, towards the rock, but gives him an option to swoop around it if need be and just get involved. Because what I don't want to do is give up a bunch of points here, especially with how hard he's come for Holo. Which is a bunch of points, right? And if I lose Holo, then it's a lot of things I need to kill to make those points back up again.
So Holo turning away, which is good, and taking that to Pleat. Presumably barrel rolling here, the target lock at this stage. I mean, never pointless taking range, a target lock, but just get some range.
It's a lot of shots. When I put my Fen Rao in, it's range 3 through a rock, I'll be here. Oh no, I'm dead.
I mean, he's not got shields, right? That's the problem.
That is the problem. That's true.
The thing that taking the deplete does do here is that after you've barrel rolled, obviously with Holo, you're going to have to pass off a token. I'm assuming that you don't want to pass off your focus or evade. And so unfortunately, one of these SFs that are in nice positions is going to...
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this was a case of just forgetting all of a sudden that Holo's ability is a must, not a may, right? So it's like, this is fine. I'm not taking a shot, so it's perfectly okay. So I'll barrel roll up and token up, and then remember that I have to pass something.
Oh... What a shame.
So my damage output was poor before, and it's just dropped off a cliff.
Although with optics, you're really likely to get a hit.
I think I did comment, talking to Tyler in the game, that it was the most accurate 1-die gun in the world.
And so we see that go off to the sort of further away guy. A bit of an arbitrary decision there between the 2 of them. So, Holo so far killed a buzz droid and passed off an evade. So it's certainly useful in that opening engagement, but since then, obviously, you would have hoped to get more out of him, but is still full health. This is the first time he's taken any sort of dangerous fire. We got the Holo clearly has no shots. Seer taking a shot here at the depleted guy. Rolls 2 hits. And you get evade focus. And you decide not to spend the focus here and take the damage. On a 1 dice attack ship, I wasn't sure why he did that.
Yeah, it's not a great decision. And I think the thought process at the time was just trying to put damage into droids to try and kill something and lessen the number of shots coming into Holo. Now, it's really not a good shot. It is a 1 damage shot regardless, right? But anything I can do to try and take a droid off the table just gives more breathing space to Holo, so I was willing to trade a shield for this. I don't think it's a great decision, but I don't think it's a terrible decision. I think it was a series of bad choices, and I picked one of them.
I mean, I think, let's be fair as well, I think Tyler should have shot the other guy. Yes, that guy's lost a shield, but the other guy, first of all, chance to strip the focus of the higher threat shot, and you have 3 shots on him.
Yeah, I'd agree, Ben. I think you're right. It's the guy you wanted to take the focus off. And to make matters worse, your 1-die gun rolls a natural hit, so you didn't even need the focus. But you have managed there to chip a damage through onto the pink droid. So now we have the back SF, the one that's in a really nice position, has been all game. And this time, similar choice to last time, but I think you fire at Seer here. Is that because the mod makes the difference?
Yeah, basically, the chance to get 3 hits in and start putting some serious damage into Seer, it becomes relevant. And also, because Holo can now die this turn, killing Seer or taking points from Seer is a big enough chunk to help pay for that cost if I do lose Holo.
Okay, and so you're obviously clearly very worried about Holo and kind of looking to have to make those points back up.
Quite the understatement.
Yeah. And so Seer, even with the reroll, gets the 1 evade and does lose shields. And then we have the droids firing into Holo. Now we've got this back droid on a rock who isn't going to be able to fire. The rest look like they've all got range, but I suppose in your favour, not great shots. They all look to be either obstructed or range 3 or possibly both.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm expecting sort of 1.2, 1.3 evades on most of these attacks, and obviously I have a token for the worst one. So realistically, I'm maybe expecting to get halved here. And
so first we've got that back droid, the guy who stayed on the rock. Going back to sort of Ben's point from earlier on, you can see here that, as Ben said, you can split these guys up, right? Once they start getting on rocks, it's much harder to keep the whole swarm together.
Also, I was mistaken, Elliot. I thought that guy was only a shield down. He's 2 shields down, so he just needed 1 more for half, right?
Yeah, which I think at that point the shot becomes worthwhile, right?
Yes, I misread that.
But kept the focus earlier, took an extra damage, and it all ends up even as you spend it there to prevent the damage. So no harm done in the long run. This first shot has his friends calculate, but none of his own. Range 3 through a rock, so we're going to be looking at 2 dice into 5. Unhappy to have to spend the token here, but stranger things have happened. So 1 crit coming in here. Holo just about manages to get 1 evade on 5 dice, and so it's okay from the first one. And for all we're saying that Lloyd's in a better position, I think he still is. Tyler has got benefit of his laser focus on Holo here, right? He has trapped Holo in the corner. Yep. He's getting a bunch of shots this turn, and you know what? Next turn's not looking great for Holo either. So in terms of game plan, it's okay. And actually, as I say that, we get a hit crit coming in, and despite 4 agility, one of them gets through. So Holo's down a shield. And given that everything is so cheap, Tyler's not far behind. And if he scores these points off Holo, that's going to go a long way to get him back into the game. So another 2 crits here.
Man.
Another single evade. Holo really liking rolling 1 evade.
This is a big fan.
Yeah. Takes another, so it is halved. The points are 46-46. And we've got this last 1 health droid that Lloyd refused to try and kill earlier on. I wonder if that's going to bite him. But this guy, range 3, obstructed, and Holo still has a focus taken. So still expecting to not take damage, although, to be fair, I've been expecting you not to take damage for all the shots so far, and that's not been happening. Gets the 2 hits with the calculate spend. But Holo finally decides to roll some paint. And you come out of that halved, but not dead. And I think it's really in the balance here, right? So now in a situation where I think the SFs are still in a nice place in comparison to the droids, but the scores are level, and Holo has got a choice to make. Unlimited options, right? He can hard turn right, which is maybe the more predictable move, but at least gives you the runaway move the turn after this, should you still be alive. Or you can hard turn left, which maybe is more surprising, but is very jammed up for the subsequent turn.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a case of, again, still having not a lot of great choices, right? But it seems like for Tyler, the obvious thing to do here is to turn right, try and cover those escape routes.
I'm actually super tempted if I'm the Holo player. You turn left, he has to have come straight to kill you, right? And that means he's gone all in on, he's put himself in the corner as much as you are now. And your SFs can do whatever they want. So you'll lose, maybe not immediately, you'll lose the rest of those Holo points. And your SFs are just like blasting into him who is now out of position.
Yeah, absolutely. If he goes into that corner, it's very, very hard gamble. He's gambling most of his list and basically his entire game on that 1 tile.
Yeah, I think from Tyler's point of view, Green's in a nice spot here, and maybe at the risk of passing up a shot this turn, you can 2-bank Green onto that asteroid in front of him. It means that Lloyd has to reposition if he's turned right, and if he's turned left, where you might not get the shot this round, you can rotate on the rock next round and almost guarantee that shot. Given what you've said, if you're not going to commit further into this corner, which again I can see your point of view entirely, Ben, that killing Holo is all well and good, but if you lose 2 or 3 droids doing it, then you've lost. Given that we think he's maybe not doing that, then what do we think he's doing? Hard turns to the right to trying to get in the way of these SFs and get shots?
Yeah, like I've kind of accepted that I'm probably going to lose Holo's points, and so I need to find a way with, I think, maybe 2 or so turns left, how I'm going to get enough points back to pay for that. So obviously we looked at taking damage from Seer earlier. But it's, yes, how do I find those 28 points that I suspect I'm probably giving up in the next turn or two?
So the danger for you is the Seer and the one on the rock are in nice blocking positions, so you going straight is a bit of an issue.
I don't hate the 5 straights with both of them because, although you're right that Seer and the guy on that central rock can block the hurt SF, there's nothing to follow up, right? If you bump into, worst case scenario, you bump into the droid and exchange range 1 fire with Seer. Now that's not great, but I don't think a lot of the other droids are shooting at you. So I think 5 straights with both of those feels really good. For that reason, I think with the 1 health droid, I think I 2 straight him off this rock.
Yeah.
I think the potential benefit is you cover the hard turn into the corner from Holo, and I think it gets him out of trouble. I think leaving him there, he's likely to get shot. He's on 1 health. He's got a high chance of dying. Whereas if you 2 straight him, there's a good chance that these bottom SFs have overshot where you are. There's a good chance you get a shot on Holo if he turns into that corner, and it puts distance between you and the sort of chasing SFs. So I think that is a nice move. I think the hard turns with everything else makes sense as we start to see coming in here. Probably leave that central guy. He's in quite a nice. He's got the potential to get in the way of Lloyd's SFs coming back in, and then Seer kind of maybe trundles forward. The sloop with Seer, I'd be tempted by. I think from this position to sloop right. Again, it's a slightly unpredictable place. You've got the opportunity for those bottom SFs to fly past you, and you put the rock in between yourself and the top SFs. I don't hate the sloop to the right here.
From my situation, I actually also love the idea of the sloop because it does 2 things, right? It takes away his offensive mods. He doesn't have a focus token. And it turns off Solidus 1 if I do go past, so that I shoot back him, it turns off his defensive mods as well. So it gives me the potential to really score those points.
If you were to have 5 straighted. It's a judgment thing, and I don't know. I just wonder if the 5 straight it puts Seer in your side arc. That was my kind of thinking behind it. And if you go slower than that, I think it almost definitely does. So Tyler here's gone for the hard turns. We'll see now what these guys on the rocks are doing.
So this is what I was worried about for the guy, your left SF. Is he going to get blocked out of this 5 forward and into a lot of arcs?
Yeah, and to be fair, I didn't think that was possible, but it looks like it is. That droid coming off here, presumably he's just going to stay still and calculate. And and these SFs looking like they might be blocked here. So Seer comes forward, smashes into that front guy, but looks like he's going to be blocked all the way back onto the back of that droid. No mod for Seer, but definitely has removed the possibility of the 5 straight working. And so trading that for maybe taking a bit more damage from these chasing SFs. Yeah. There's the first blocked 5 straight forward. This guy only in 1 arc though, full health. Not in too much risk at the moment. And presume he's done the same thing. Yeah, okay. And so
that brings him all the way back.
Yeah, and he is in significantly more trouble. Decent fire into Seer here. So that guy's got 4 health. He's not going to get killed before he fires, but he may well get killed after he's fired. So combination of the shot from Seer here and the 2 droids, one of which is at range 1. Interestingly, we didn't see the rotate from that blue droid, and that surprises me a little bit. I think given the position he's in, I don't really know what he's playing for there. He's not getting the shot on Holo this round. He is in a better place to threaten Holo next round, seeing as you've thankfully gone left. But I think if you were going to threaten the turn left from Holo, the 2 straight was better. And if you weren't going to threaten that, you should have rotated around to get your gun in the fight. So I think maybe a slight misplay there from Tyler. But as we always say on the channel, this is with perfect hindsight, seeing where everyone's gone and exactly what's happened.
Yeah, I think Tyler's plan with blue was just keep him there as a calculator battery, but hadn't factored in also bringing his gun to bear.
Absolutely, the calculate battery is huge. I always get annoyed when I see people move their droids away from you, not turning the arcs towards you. Think, what are you doing, you idiot? And then you realise what they're up to.
So Holo here is doing her first offensive action of the game.
Woohoo! And I think I'm right in saying here there's this turn and 1 more. So you never know, may even get to fire next turn. So Grievous here has the choice, range 1, but into a full health SF, or range 2 into the damaged guy. I think you've got to go range 2, although the lack of mods, it's always nice to roll more dice. Oof. And the lack of a mod really hurting there. So 1 hit and 1 evade. So good start of the turn for Lloyd. This back guy at least evading that first shot. Lloyd's SF which would have been in a much better position had he barrel or lesser. With the 2 hits, nice, and getting we've got the defensive reroll here, but getting both of them through, it looks like.
Yeah.
So that's half points into Seer.
Yeah, it's earned back Holo's points that she's lost so far.
And more. He's the most expensive ship on the board. With another shot coming in here and only 3 health left, could well die before the end of the game. And here is that shot. So range 1. I can't see any. Well, you've got a choice again of killing that droid or putting more damage into Seer. I think with Holo Seer is I probably fire at Seer here, and that's what you do. But the dice let you down. 1 hit, and Seer gets the evade. More shots here on Seer, ignoring these guys. So another damage goes to you, and in fact a crit from your blocked unmodded guy.
Which I'm pretty sure he gets rid of Impervium Plating.
Yeah.
Nice. Impervium Plating. Oh, it's got to be one of the most annoying upgrades in the game for that reason.
Oh my word. In my game yesterday, I took a direct hit on Grievous, and I took another ship crit. Like, it's just maximum value.
That's horrendous.
And so then what we saw there was a range 1 shot into, I think, the 1 health droid who spends his own calculator to survive it.
Yep.
Okay. And the sort of decision to switch the droid there because you've got that crit and because you hadn't got any nearer to killing Seer?
Essentially, yeah.
So 3 hits coming in there from the range 1 droid. But this SF wants to live. 2 natural evades.
At some points, though.
Yeah. But yeah, as you say, half points. Always nice when you get the reward for your amazing block. 3 ships required to get that block, all in perfect position. And what's he done so far? I think he's rolled perfect attack and defense dice. And so I think the last shot of the round here coming in from the yellow guy.
Ooh.
Gets 2 hits with the calculate. And yet more paint, but at least one focus there. And so gets another damage. So a good turn for you, I think, actually. Given the bumps, actually you were bumped into a position where Tyler just had lost a few too many arcs there. I think not rotating blue has probably made the difference there.
Yeah, I think I agree. That's absolutely the difference, right? 1 extra arc on might well result in a dead SF, might well result in half points on the other one.
Yeah.
The problem I still have, of course, is that Holo is still in an awful position. I've dodged death for 1 more turn, but have literally 1 thing on my dial at this stage.
It's a really awkward final turn, right? Because so for you, you're in a situation where all your SFs could just be gone, right? They could be like, okay, cool, I'm not getting shot. This is totally safe. Except you might give up more points with Holo.
And I'm absolutely expecting to from the position he's in, right? Because
Yep.
I can only 1 turn there.
Yeah.
And Tyler knows that as well as I do. And so has just basically infinite time to work out where he wants to be to take account for that.
So Holo's going to give up, assuming the worst, 26 more points. Where are you? You're 13 behind.
So 13 meaning that half a droid is not enough. You need 2 halves of the droid or the rest of Seer to make up for the fact that we're expecting that you'll lose Holo here.
Yeah.
I think Tyler's got a bit of a choice as to how many shots he thinks it's going to take to kill Holo, and obviously that's not easy. But again, blue looks like he should probably be 2 straighting off this rock.
Mm.
Hard to see green and yellow doing anything other than 1 harding. Oh, in fact, sorry, green's going to stay still and rotate, and yellow maybe 1 hard. And I think there's a choice with the other droids as to whether they join in to try and kill Holo or they turn around to fire into other stuff. I think the plus for Lloyd here is that nothing else is particularly close to giving up points. So the other thing Lloyd needs to sort of pay a bit of attention to keeping safe is number 1 here. Because if he loses that and Holo, then I think it's game over. So what were your thoughts in terms of coming into this turn? Were you kind of going ship by ship? How are you thinking about it, Lloyd?
I think it was similar to what you just said, right? So number 1, the first ISF has to survive and be safe because I can't guarantee that Holo is safe. So I can't afford to give up any more points than that. So 1 has to just get out and be safe and get away from the fight. And then it's how many points I need to score in return for probably almost definitely losing Holo. So as you've said, half of a drone isn't enough.
Yeah, and you've got blue on 1 health and pink on 1 health. So they're, although pink looks maybe slightly tricky to get shots on, they're kind of good candidates. Yellow actually is also only 1 point off half with 2 health. So you've definitely got the targets to go for. it's going to be a little bit dicey. You know, we've seen already that your 2 dice guns on some turns have been devastating to the droids, and on others have done nothing. From Tyler's point of view, I'd stick by what I've said about green and yellow. I think they've got to turn in to try and punish Holo. Blue doesn't have many choices, and the straightforward is probably just as good a move to keep him alive as it is to threaten Holo.
Yeah.
And it's whether you can then afford to kind of hard disengage with pink.
It almost feels like if you're going to go all in on this plan I must kill Holo, does the 2 hard left and some sort of barrel definitely not get you a shot? Probably not.
But it can potentially come in and just be a calculate battery for other ships. Like, he's got a lot of calculates, but it gives him flexibility.
Yeah, like there's not enough benefit to just going straight that I wouldn't rather just 2 hard left here, to be honest.
I think I just worry about it putting me closer to these Zetas in terms of blowing up. And Sear's interesting here. You kind of almost with where everything is, and certainly where everything's moved. I think it looks like Tyler is going to gamble everything on trying to not lose 2 halves of droids. With the ships that are left, it's hard to threaten that number 1 Zeta. I think enough to kind of reliably try and put 2 health into it.
Yeah.
I think to do so, you have to kind of sloop Seer, and then if you're losing Seer, you're in trouble anyway. So it looks like the game plan from Tyler is kill Holo and cross your fingers that you don't lose 2 droids in the process. But another tight match, 2.0 is like this, right? I cannot remember the last time I played a game that didn't go to time. And it's always so close.
We're watching good players as well who aren't making outrageous mistakes, right? So nobody's getting hugely punished for things. So yeah, it is good.
And when we were talking about how many things you're going to dedicate to scoring the points on Holo, so obviously Tyler sent 4 of his droids there, but has slooped Seer, so Seer does have a shot on, basically anything he wants.
Yeah.
That 5 straight is very nicely judged. Had that bumped, you'd be back at or close to range 1, probably range 2, but without a token and at risk of dying there. Holo is in trouble here. I don't see how he doesn't die, basically. I think at this point, with Kraken in full force now, you see the amount of calculate these ships have taken in with them. You've got Seer's ability. Well, Seer's got a chance of dying, to be fair, before the droids fire, but it's perhaps unlikely. So taking the strain to barrel roll, brave. Well, maybe not brave. We'll talk about that in a minute. So, yeah.
And what I wanted to do from here was boost left.
Mm-hmm.
Because if a boost left fits, it dodges 2 arcs and gets me a shot into whichever the droids I want, preferably the 1 health one that kills it. And it clears the ship, but not the rock, by about 3 pixels. And I spent so long looking at whether it cleared the ship when I was working out whether I was going to barrel roll that I hadn't accounted for the tiny bit of rock that was poking out.
Oh, nice. Well, that's fine, because struts, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it was such a perfect arc dodge that just didn't account for that.
And so actually, I think what you've done there is really sensible, right? And you can only make that decision knowing the points. So we get the target lock shot into blue here, rerolls into hit, crit, and that is enough to kill blue. So it would have been the easiest thing in the world, and certainly really easy if you were unsure on the points, to take an evade, take a focus, cross your fingers, leave Holo where he was. Your win condition is, Holo doesn't die. But actually, because you knew the points and because you knew that 2 halves of droids is enough, then you can make that decision. You can make the decision that Holo is dead, but Holo is going to help me win the game before he dies. And now your 4 SFs have to kill half a droid or Seer for you to win the game, assuming that Seer doesn't do anything crazy with this range 3 shot into the SF. I'm really not expecting him to. Had Holo not done that, had Holo focused and stayed at range and kept his focus to try and stay alive, then actually your 4 SFs have got that half 2 droids, and that's much less likely to happen. And so I think that's actually a really good example for anybody really watching is you've got to know the points, you've got to know the game state, and the ability to keep a clear head in the end game. That decision could win Lloyd the game. Seer there with the 1 hit, no mods, range 3, and clearly doesn't do enough to score any more points. So, still assuming that Holo's going to die, this all comes down to, can Lloyd score some points? So the available options are, and this might seem a bit fine print to people watching, and we're going to talk through now target priority, but this is the game. Lloyd needs to score some more points. Doesn't matter where they come from, but some more points, and he has one. Doesn't matter at that point whether Holo dies or not. And it's the last turn of the game, and you can all do this. You can all sit and take time and stop. In that final game, you need to get the cut. You should be stopping and working the same.
As we are at the moment, obviously we've said already I need to kill one more droid, but if I don't kill anything and score any points and Holo dies here, I lose by 1 point.
So what are your options? You've got the same information as you with your first ship. So we've got Seer, who's going to be taking 2 range 2 shots, a range 3 shot, and a range 3 obstructed shot. So 8 incoming dice into 11 evades with 1 reroll on that last shot to do 3 damage. Not terrible, but have you got a better option? You've got shots into this bottom cluster of droids. Now, Yellow is at range 3 obstructed and is the only one off half. And also, they've all got tokens to share. Plus, I'm not sure that your left-handmost SF has shots into any of them. So we can probably immediately discount those 3 droids as the most difficult things to take points off. Everyone agree? Yeah. And so then we're left with the choice of the shots into Seer or into the droid. Now, the droid behind has more agility because it's at range. It's going to be at range 3 of more ships. But you only need to get 1 hit into it rather than 3, and that is a big difference. So I think you've got options here. But I think if it's me, I shoot everything at the droid. What do you reckon, Ben?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not a math whiz, so I don't know statistically, but just instinctively to me, intuitively, it's got to be the droid, right? Just to sneak 1 damage through out of 4. I mean, this is where optics really comes into play, right? You got 4 2-dice shots that are really good odds of being 2 hits.
Yeah, and then he's going to need 2 natural evades on every single roll. So that seems like a choice to me. Lloyd, is that kind of what you go for?
Yeah, and that's absolutely it. It was Seer is obviously more points, and winning by a bigger margin is nice, but winning by a bigger margin is a luxury. And if the choice is win or lose, I will take the win option.
Yeah.
So take the easy points available to you. Winning by 1 MOV is perfectly acceptable as long as you win. Right?
Cool. And so let's hit play there and see whether you manage to do that 1 hit. And you should do this, right? As we've said, you've got to think that, at least 2 or 3 of these are going to be 2 hit shots with your optics. And I don't fancy something's chance of rolling 2 evades over 3 dice 3 times in a row. But the more shots, the fewer shots you've got left, the more you're going to start to worry about it.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I think it's one of those. It should happen. I'd be surprised and more a bit disappointed if it didn't happen, but it's pretty high probability, right? And like I said, it's not a sexy win if it comes off, but it's the sensible, reliable, and probable one.
So that's the first
it's a
2
good
hits. 3 evades. That's too many. He's used up too many evades.
Yeah, you got to don't use them up.
And then this guy, the worst shot, and he gets 2. And despite the 4 evades, I told you he'd use them all up. And he dies. And now you've got 2 remaining shots. And this is just to confirm the win. We know the points. We know you're already safe should Holo die. But as you say, a bigger win is nicer than a smaller win. So at this point, points-wise, again, you've got a choice. You can shoot into the droids to try and strip some of those calculates, keep Holo alive, or try and just take the points off Seer. But not helped by the double evade there from the first droid. So the final shot here looks like 2 hits. Does spend a calculate to take 1 and stays above half. So no more points scored. And so strained. So the first attack is going to be 2 agility. And so it makes sense here, I think, to shoot with Yellow first. You've got range. You've got Seer's ability. So spend your buddies calculate for hit crit. And Holo needs 2 evades to survive. 1 evade takes the crit. And I think, again, Lloyd being slightly kind here, You'll have to tell me where the ordering of things reveals the crit, but then the crack shot happens for that second damage. And that's game over with a fine 101 to
92.
Point victory. Never in doubt.
Oh, well played by both. I think he put you under threat very quickly in a nice way, and then it's funny these games where your aces don't shoot very much, because actually it can feel bad, but it's like, you know what, if they're chasing my ace and he's living until the end of the game, that's okay.
And Holo's such a weird ship as well, because she's not really an ace. Like, she's I5, but she can't really double reposition unless, under very specific circumstances, right? She can barrel roll, provided she's happy to take a deplete or a strain.
Yeah.
And then can boost, but can't do it with any tokens. She's a very odd ship, and I tend to run her mostly as a support ship, which is what she is in this list. Now, obviously, the matchup meant that I couldn't use her the way I was intending to, that she couldn't just sit behind a block of SFs and roll around and cause problems for things. And so this was a kind of like on the fly, come up with a different plan for her. So I think the main thing for this, for me, to jump ahead slightly, was the flexibility, right? Coming into this with a plan for the list pre-matchup, then seeing my opponent's list and deciding that plan doesn't work and it isn't going to be suitable for this specific matchup. So adjusting out, having a new plan, and then constantly kind of assessing and reassessing the whole way through.
And I think for me, looking at it from Tyler's point of view, what I learned from Tyler's players is there's more than one way to skin a cat. I actually disagreed with quite a lot of his choices in the early to mid game. I'd have been at the top of the board trying to deal with the SFs rather than sticking to Holo. But to be fair to him, he had a plan. He was going to get Holo and he stuck to it. And, lost by a couple of dice rolls. There wasn't a lot in it in the end. Most lists in the game are going to have multiple ways they can win, and there are multiple approaches that could be successful. And actually, what you need to do to win is pick one of those potentially successful approaches and then execute it well. And I think the thing that Tyler did well was he executed chasing Holo into that corner really well. I think from your point of view, Lloyd, you flew really well. I think it would have been nice to get more out of Holo, but certainly with a ship you're not particularly experienced with the new list, definitely that discretion was the right way to go. If you'd given up his points early in the game, that would have really swung things. I think if I was taking things away again from you in future, I think you overcommitted on that first turn, right? I think you decided you knew what he was doing and probably could have been a little bit more cautious, but again, a minor thing. And
it was that kind of building a plan a bit on the fly. My plan decided that I was going to get behind or past his droids without really having an idea how to do it, other than I have a reasonable dial and a rear arc, and I'll just...
I am going to go quick. Yeah. And Ben, final thoughts?
Oh, man. Not much different. I think it's like when we talked about this the other game, and it's stuck in my brain, but this thing about like here, this turn, this is what's happening, and committing to it pretty well. Like, I think just seeing like the whole game, Tyler kept his droids together nicely, whereas I've played people and seen matches where the droids get pulled apart and they get way weaker, and I think what this showed is like keep them together as much as possible really makes them scary, right?
Yeah, we've seen, I've flown droids on this channel, and I think Tyler did a better job of it than I did. Thankfully, we cut my game sort of 10 minutes in.
You were up against a much higher quality of opponent than Tyler was, though, to be fair.
Yeah, no, well played both.
And I think that leaves it to me to say thank you ever so much to Tyler for letting us record the game. Cheers, Lloyd, for letting us criticise you on this occasion rather than me. And we'll see everyone again in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye.